Hi, fifth graders. We are here today for session 7 of our Fantasy Book Club lessons, and we're going to be talking about how readers of fantasy learn real life lessons from your fantasy characters. Last year, I was talking with a book club, and they were trying to decide on their new book that they were reading. So they had already finished one book, and they were going to read a new book. And one student suggested that they read Lord of the Rings. And I know this student, and I knew that this student had already read Lord of the Rings before. And so I asked him, why would you want to read Lord of the Rings again? You've already read it. And he just kind of looked at me, and he was looking at me, and you could see he was gathering his thoughts in his mind. And then finally he said to me, the Lord of the Rings is not about hobbits and elves. This story is about the struggle between good and evil. This story is about how power slowly eats away and corrupts. And he said that it's about how the physically strong can use their gifts to protect others, and that even the smallest and physically weak people can make a huge difference in the world. And I was just kind of blown away by his explanation of that. And I was like, huh, wow, you are right. Fantasy books are not really about the castles and the elves and the dragons. They're really about extremely important life lessons that we can take away and apply those to our own lives. So today, what we want to focus on is thinking about our fantasy novels and what are those life lessons that our fantasy novels and our fantasy characters can teach us. And then we can take those lessons away and apply those to our own lives. And in the fall, we talked a lot about theme and themes in books. And this is kind of the same idea, is that there's a lot of themes and life lessons in fantasy novels that we can take away and apply to our own lives. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Before we get into identifying some of those themes in our novels, I want to take a look at just some common themes that we often see in fantasy novels. So I'm going to show you a little presentation here that's going to help you think a little bit about those common themes. All right, so common themes in fantasy. So these are things that we oftentimes see, or a lot of times these are the themes or the life lessons or just kind of the ideas that we can take away from our fantasy books. We see these a lot in fantasy. So this first one is just kind of explaining what themes are, just to give you a reminder. So it says, although there are many features of the fantasy genre, one aspect remains true for all fantasy books: the use of universal themes. Universal themes are central ideas that are relatable to a wide range of readers. Remember that theme is the underlying meaning of a text, the heart of the text, or the author's message. Theme is an opinion expressed on the subject. So the first theme that we often see in fantasy novels is good versus evil. Good versus evil is a common theme seen in fantasy books. The hero of the story must overcome some evil with the help of others in order to learn something about themselves and save others. The next one is love. Love is also a common theme in fantasy books. When we talk about love, we're referring to an unconditional love, a concept much deeper than any other. This is the love between family members, friends, respected individuals, etc. In fantasy books, love truly conquers all. Friendship is the next one. The theme of friendship is commonplace in fantasy stories because the hero or main character always or almost always needs a good friend by their side to complete the quest. Sometimes the main character does not realize how important the friendship is until the end of the story. Perseverance. All heroes in a fantasy story must persevere, especially in the face of danger. They must overcome their fears and complete a task essential to the quest for the good of themselves and others. Okay, so those were some of the common themes in fantasy that we oftentimes see. And as we were going through that, I know that I was thinking, about how I've read a lot of fantasy novels, and I've seen a lot of those themes in my fantasy novels. And so I'm sure as you were watching that too, you might have been making those connections to your fantasy novel as well. So I want to give you an example of how you might do this work with your own fantasy novel. So in thinking about Harry Potter and thinking about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, as you know, this is a book that I've read multiple times. I've read the series multiple times, and so I know it well. But I went ahead and created a chart that shows the themes that I thought were in Harry Potter, and specifically in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and then also the evidence that I have for those themes. Okay, because as fifth graders, we know that if we're making a claim about a theme, what a theme is in a story, we need to provide evidence. So I'll go ahead and go over a few of these. So the first theme that I identified for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was friendships are important. My evidence for that is that Harry has two best friends, Ron and Hermione. They work together on all of the challenges and quests Harry is faced with. Without them, Harry would not be able to complete these quests. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry relies on Hermione's knowledge and Ron's strategic play in Wizard's chess to reach the Sorcerer's Stone. So notice I had a theme, and then I had multiple pieces of evidence for it from across the novel. The second theme I thought of for Harry Potter was good versus evil. Harry must overcome the evil that is Lord Voldemort. Lord Voldemort wants to take over all of the wizarding world and have all of the power. Harry is working to combat that with the good. He is fighting for what is right. And the third one I identified was love conquers all. And here's my evidence. Harry's mom saved his life by jumping in front of him when Voldemort tried to kill him because she loved him so much. Harry loves and cares about his friends and the wizarding world so much that he risks his life to defeat Lord Voldemort multiple times. In Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry fought to retrieve the Sorcerer's Stone so it did not get into the hands of the wrong people who would use the stone's power for evil doing. All right, so I went ahead, again, I thought about those life lessons in Harry Potter that I could apply to my own life, or in other words, those are the themes. So I went ahead and identified those themes, and then I provided evidence from across the stories to support those themes. So what I'd like you to do in your reading journals as you're reading your fantasy novel is to begin to think about those life lessons that you can learn from your fantasy novel, those life lessons or themes. So your success criteria over on the side here is in your reading journals. I would like you to list the themes or life lessons that are showing up in your fantasy novels. Try to list at least two. Second, list the evidence from each of those themes from across your story. Remember, we want at least 2 to 3 pieces of evidence for each theme because as fifth graders, we need evidence that comes across from the entire story, right? It's not going to be a very strong theme if it's only in one part of the story. With themes, we oftentimes see evidence of them across the story. So make sure you think of at least 2 to 3 pieces of evidence for each theme. And finally, be ready to share at your book club meeting. I do want to see pictures of these reading journals with this work in there, and also bring it to your book club so you're ready to share.
Hey fifth graders, this is Miss Olson, and we're going to keep going on our opinion writing today. I've been super impressed with the stuff that I've seen sent in, and so I'm excited to keep going with it. Today's target is I can identify and add elements of strong opinion writing into my own writing. And I know you guys have done a lot of writing this year. We've done narrative, we've done informational writing, and I just want us to think about what were some of the things that make our writing really strong. And you can even think about like some of the things that we do in Book of Knowledge that helps make our thinking and our inferences really strong. So take a second and do that. What I heard from many of you in our conversations is that it's really important to remember CREE, that we have a claim, a reason, evidence, and explain, and that is very true, and it transfers into this type of writing really, really well. Today we're going to look at some samples of some writing that other students have done, and we're just we're going to notice some of the things that they are doing really well in their writing. So let's look at this first one. So this one is the nomination of the best superhero of all, and their claim is it's Batman. So I'm going to read it to you, and we can kind of notice what are some of the things that they do really well. So Batman is the best superhero for many reasons. First, Batman has special equipment. For example, he has his own special car, the Batmobile. The Batmobile can go super fast, and it can even jump over cars. Also, he has weapons, like a batarang, that can knock weapons out of bad people's hands. Batman is also special because he's very brave. He fights crazy villains like the Joker and the Penguin. They are really bad, and it takes courage to fight them. He doesn't have any magical powers, and he still fights them. He is very brave. I have a few Batmans from when I was little, and I don't really do anything with them, but I still like them because they remind me of how Batman is a good guy superhero. Some of the other superheroes are more mean, but he is all good. Out of 10 stars, I give him 10 stars. So if we go back and look at that a little bit, what are some of the things that you guys notice that make his writing really strong? Some of you said they have a really strong claim in theirs. There's definitely reasons and really good examples. I saw them using the words "for example" and some good details in there as well. Sometimes they even use really words that really pop out that are powerful. Some great stuff. So if we look at this against our success criteria from our last assignment, what makes for strong opinion writing, we can find some of these elements in this student's writing. So did they have a bold opinion? Yeah, they definitely did. They said that Batman is the best superhero, right? They had reasons, and actually I noticed they had each reason was in a different paragraph, which is something that really great writers do, is they organize their writing into paragraphs. They gave examples, and they backed up their details with reasons, kind of explained them. And at the end, I even noticed they said that is why they give Batman 10 out of 10 stars. So kind of tying it back up to him being the greatest superhero. If we look in there, we actually can see where some of these things live. So the best superhero of all, that is definitely a bold opinion. That's saying that above all other superheroes, Batman is the best. We've got reasons, we've got examples, actually multiple examples in each paragraph and lots of details around it. New paragraphs for a new reason. And I really like that powerful word choice in there that fights crazy villains like the Joker. Okay, really using some good strong word choice. As we continue, we see they have another paragraph tied in with a personal story. Like when he was little, what he had, the little Batmans that he had, they didn't really do anything with them, but he still likes them because they remind me of how Batman is a good guy. So tying that into the personal connection, and then having a ranking system that really brings everything back together and reinforces that he is the best of all. So we're going to do some of this work in our own writing. So we can get into there. I also took another student's writing, and we have some writing that looks like that first Batman one, and we have some writing that's looking like this writing. And so I'm going to read it, and we're actually going to help this student. We're just going to look at this writing and see what elements of strong opinion writing do they have in their writing, and where do they need some more work. So this one is, I like the red dragon. So going back to our dragon pictures, I like the red dragon. It is red. If it has wings, and it has scales. So do they have a bold opinion? Yeah, they like the red dragon. They've made their opinion clear. They've given some details. It's red, it has wings, it has scales. So they have a couple of the components of it. Let's look at our chart a little bit closer. So we have a bold opinion, and we have some reasons. We kind of missed out on some of the examples and the details and a little bit of the ending. So I'm wondering if we can think of ways to make this writing a little bit stronger. So I've been thinking about it a little bit and added a couple more things in there, and I want you guys to tell me what you think of this one. This is the dragon I'd like to have for a pet. I like the red dragon the best. One reason is I think it's beautiful. Another reason is that it is red, and red is my favorite color. It is a lively color. Also, the wings are fancy. The red dragon is the best, not just because it's beautiful, but also because it can fly. I would like the red dragon as a pet. It could fly me to cool places. Okay? So we added just a little bit more of some of those things that make our writing really strong. Added some more to the reason, gave a little bit more of the examples. I saw the personal connection in there, and then used it in the ending to tie it back together. So that wasn't a ton extra, but added a little bit more that made it stronger. I wanted to take a chance to model this with some of my own writing, and I haven't gotten a chance to share my collection with most of you, and so I wanted to do that as well. So my collection that I have at my house, and it's not out right now, but during Christmas, is these gnomes, Christmas gnomes, and I have a lot of them. And the one that I'm thinking is the best is this guy down here. And I just, for the sake of this lesson, named him Larry. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Larry the gnome. So the gnome with the fuzzy hat, Larry, is the best gnome in my collection. As you look at him, you'll see that his fuzzy hat stands out compared to the others. His beard is under control for the most part, and I love how his nose is barely peeking out. Larry the Christmas gnome has the best hat of all the Christmas gnomes in my collection. The long pieces of fur can be brushed in any direction and change up the look of his hat. His hat is bigger than his whole body, which makes me giggle. And when I look at him, it makes me giggle when I look at him. Finally, I love how far down the hat goes on his head. It reminds me of the Disney character, and I imagine him having an accent if he could talk. Another thing about Larry is that he stands out against the rest is his beard. Many gnomes that I have seen have out of control beards. It's like fur everywhere. Larry's beard is pretty neat though. It has a shape that gets more narrow at the bottom, and that makes him seem more sophisticated. Okay, so those are some of my things about why Larry, this guy right over here, is my favorite gnome. So I actually went back and did the exact same task that we did with the Batman story. And I looked for elements of strong opinion writing in my writing. And I was definitely able to find my bold opinion at the top, that Larry is the best gnome in my collection. I gave some reason, examples, and details. And I did start a new paragraph. And I even used some powerful word choice when I used the word sophisticated to describe him a little bit more. So I do have some elements that make my writing strong. What I'm noticing on here, because I did have the bold opinion, the reasons, and the examples, is I was missing an ending. I kind of just stopped after I said he's sophisticated, and I didn't connect back to what my opinion was. And so I want to go back and do some editing with that. So I took some bigger Post-it notes, and I actually just decided I'm just going to write my ending on the Post-it notes, and then that will help me later on. So when I went back to add in my ending, I put that the more that I think about it, it is even more clear to me that Larry the Christmas gnome is the best gnome in my collection. When I consider his hat and the way it makes me giggle with all of its potential styles, and the beard that makes him appear much wiser and more sophisticated than the others, I can't help but give this Christmas gnome 10 out of 10 stars. So now I think I have all the elements of the strong writing. So just those little pieces of revision and looking really closely at my writing helped me to make my writing even stronger. That is your task this week. You guys have a paper in your packet that looks like this, writing day number 1, and you're going to watch the video, which is the one you're watching right now, that was posted on May 7th. And you're going to look at your writing that you did about your collection, and you actually have the small blue sticky notes, just like I did, to find where in your writing you have examples of strong opinion writing. And then you actually are going to get some of those larger Post-it notes as well to add in revisions. So if there's pieces or elements that you left out, use those bigger Post-it notes to write those and add them in later for a later draft. All right, I look forward to hearing about your revisions, and we'll see you guys later.
Hi, fifth graders. It's Mrs. McMillan here with your McMillan Math Minute, or 10. Today, we are going to be working on page 204. It looks like this. It says fraction and decimal story problems up here at the top. And there are 3 problems that you're going to be working on. Today, your target is I can solve real world story problems and persevere in solving them. This word persevere means to try again. It means to keep going even when it's tough. Some might say we're persevering through this distance learning. I also wanted you to know that I've included Spanish on the backs of all of the pages. So you just can flip it over for my Spanish-speaking families to see the same content in Spanish. So today we're going to be looking at some story problems. These story problems have multiple steps. You're going to need to be very careful to read through the whole problem, noticing what is asking what you need to do. Some of them are adding, some of them are subtracting. So be sure that when you're going through, you're reading it carefully. I'm going to go ahead and go through just this first problem with you. You know, that's pretty small on the screen, but I'm going to go ahead and help you thinking about that. You might even, as we go along, have your own page in front of you so you can follow along and do some of the same steps that I am doing. I'm going to go over your success criteria one more time. You'll need to have a picture, label that sketch or picture, solve, and make sure you have an equation to match. So if I'm reading through this problem, it says Josie is picking apples. She has 3 identical baskets that she is trying to fill. One basket is full 3/5. Another is 7/10 full, and the last is 2/3 full. What portion or how much of the 3 baskets has Josie filled? Give your answer as a mixed number and an improper fraction. So I want to go ahead and go over those vocabulary with you quickly before we move on. Today we're using improper fraction, which is a fraction greater than 1 that is not expressed as a mixed number. A fraction, which the numerator is larger than the denominator. So if I look over here, I have 3 halves. 3 is the numerator. It's larger than 2, which is the denominator. This makes it an improper fraction. A mixed number is a number also greater than 1. It's expressed as a whole number plus a fraction. So a whole and its parts. The parts is the value less than 1. So you can see here, 1 and 1/2. A whole and a half. So those are 2 ways that you're going to need to show your answer, as an improper fraction and as a mixed number. So let's go ahead and think about this problem of Josie. One thing that's helpful, and you can feel free to use the colored pencils I sent home with you a couple weeks ago to kind of underline, or just a regular pencil works as well. It says Josie's picking apples. That's great, but not important for my math. I'm going to continue on. It says she has 3 identical baskets. I'm going to underline that 3 because I think that's going to play an important part in overall solving of this problem. One basket is full 3/5. Another is 7/10 full. And the last is 2/3 full. So now I have a lot of numbers underlined. What is it asking? What portion of the 3 baskets has Josie filled? So I think it's going to be a really good idea for me to draw a picture of what is really happening. Now, this is an art class, so you don't need to draw all the details of a basket. In fact, I'm just going to draw my baskets, as 3 circles. I know that Josie has 3 baskets. She's picking apples, so I'm going to go ahead and use my red pen. And one basket, she fills 3/5 full. Another basket, she fills 7/10 full. And the last basket is 2/3 full. I know that now we need to think, what do I need to do with these numbers? What is my question asking me? Well, it says, what portion or how much of the 3 baskets are full? So I need to figure out how much has Josie filled all together. Or I need to add these problems. So my equation is going to be 3/5 plus 7/10 plus 2/3. When I look at that, I can see that my denominators here are all different. I need to make them the same so that I can add all the same portions. So a couple of weeks ago, I believe on April 28th, if you need to go back and rewatch that math video, that talks more about how to change these denominators so that they have a common multiple. So they are common denominators. Remember that word common means the same. So I'm going to think about these numbers and think about what I could do. So I'm going to use this 10. And I bet that if I write out the multiples of 10, 20, 30. Oh, I know 30 is also a multiple of 3. And I know 30 is also a multiple of 5 because it ends in that 0. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a ratio table for each of the fractions I already have. My 3/5, my 7/10, and my 2/3. And I drew these ratio tables so that I know I can change these all to 30ths. So if I'm thinking about that, when I went from 5 to 30, I know I multiplied 6 times. 5 times 6 equals 30. So if I do that to the bottom, to the denominator, I also need to multiply times 6 on the top. 3 times 6 is 18. I now have a new fraction that is equivalent to 3/5, but has that common denominator. 3/5 is the same as 18/30. I'm going to go ahead and continue on. 10 to 30, I multiplied by 3. If I multiply the bottom by 3, you got it. I'm going to multiply the top. 7 times 3 is 21. 18/30 plus 21/30. I still have one more fraction to add into my equation because I have my 2/3. So 2/3 is equivalent. I need to find the equivalent fraction. Well, I know to go from 3 to 30, I multiplied by 10 because 3 times 10 is 30. And 2 times 10 is 20. When I put those equivalent fractions together, 5th graders, you can see now that I have common denominator, the same denominators, all 30s. So I know when I add that across, I'm still going to have 30. And now I need to add these numbers. Well, when I'm thinking about that, I'm just going to add first those 10. So I have 10 plus 20, that's 30, plus 20, 50. And then I'm going to do the ones. 8 plus 1, 9. 0, 9. So I have 59. And you can do that any way that you know how to add. I just like to put those 10s together to help me think through that number. So now I have 59/30. My question, it says, give your answer as a mixed number and an improper fraction. So I have the improper fraction, But now I need to think about a mixed number. To think about that mixed number, I need to think about how many times does 30, how many groups of 30 are in 59? Well, I know there is one group of 30 and 19 30ths left over. So I've written my answer both as an improper fraction and as a mixed number. These problems will take you some time. You'll need to sit back, take a breath, go through those problems. You can do this 5th grade. It's going to just take a little bit of work. Please remember that when you are finished with that math, you need to go ahead and take a picture and send it to Mrs. Leibel or myself. We are keeping track of your work to see if you're engaged and participating in your math. Keep up the great work. I know you can do this, and we'll talk to you later.